Hi, my name is Mia Taylor, and this is my poetry analysis on Women by Louise Bogan. So, in the poem Women, it seems that the poet is criticizing and expressing her frustration towards the women in her society for not realizing or taking advantage of their full potential. Throughout the poet seems to be taking all of the characteristics of a conventional female housewife that society usually praises and finding the negative aspects in them and pointing out how they are limiting to a woman and to what she has the potential to be. And the frustration that Louise feels and expresses towards the conventional female figure, who is usually well liked in her society, makes a lot of sense when we put it into context of the time the poem was written and what was going on in the time of the poet's life in particular. The poem Women was written in 1923, which was at the start of the 1920s, which most of us know was an age of dramatic social and political change. During the 1920s, the entire nation was going through a big economic growth, and many Americans grew into an affluent but unfamiliar consumer society. Women in particular were affected greatly by this new social change. And in 1920, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution had guaranteed their right to vote. And during that time, many more women started taking on more white-collar jobs and becoming more involved in the economy. So women were becoming more politically and economically aware and involved, and were beginning to make more of an independent name for themselves. So this big social change for women during this era was also known as the Roaring Twenties. And one of the most familiar symbols of the Roaring Twenties was probably the flapper. A flapper was a young woman with normally bobbed hair and short skirts who drank, smoked, and said what might be termed unladylike things. And in addition to these women being more sexually promiscuous or free than previous generations, they also felt more of a desire to be independent. And although many women were starting to enjoy this independence and freedom that the 1920s brought, the majority of them still were living as housewives and mothers who looked down upon women for feeling the need to experience life for themselves and not for their families or their husbands. In my opinion, the fact that women were still feeling the need to tend to their husbands and their children rather than going out and getting jobs and being involved in politics and the economy, despite the fact that they were now allowed to, really frustrated Louise Bogan. And that's kind of where her inspiration and her theme of this poem, Women, came from. In 1919, Louise Bogan got a divorce to her husband, which was still a very rare and not widely accepted thing to do at the time. But the fact that she went and got a divorce showed that she wasn't going to settle just because that was what was normally expected of women in society. I think Louise Bogan saw that this was something that was so simple. If she was unhappy in her marriage, she could get a divorce. It didn't matter what society thought of her. She was going to do what it took to make her satisfied with her life. And she didn't understand why so many women sat aside and took the unsatisfaction that came with being a housewife, the unfulfillment that came with living for your family and living for your husband, and not do anything about it, even though they knew deep down there was something they could do. So, with that being said, I'm going to now read the poem, and I want everyone listening to take into consideration the background of the time the poem was written, as well as what was going on in Louise's life and her personal experiences at the time. Women have no wilderness in them. They are provident instead, content in the tight hot cell of their hearts to eat dusty bread. They do not see cattle cropping red winter grass. They do not hear snow water going down under culverts, shallow and clear. They wait when they should turn to journeys. They stiffen when they should bend. They use against themselves that benevolence to which no man is friend. They cannot think of so many crops to a field, or of clean wood cleft by an axe. Their love is an eager meaninglessness, too tense or too lax. They hear in every whisper that speaks to them a shout and a cry, as like as not, when they take life over their doorsills, they should let it go by. So just like any other poem, initially it's not so simple to grasp, so I'm going to go ahead and analyze it line by line and explain my thoughts and my interpretation of the poem exactly. So in the first stanza, I saw the biggest shift in tone in the entire poem, actually, between the first two lines and the second two lines. The first two lines to me sounded kind of positive. It was, women have no wilderness in them, they are provident instead. And I took this to mean that women are not normally careless with their actions or decisions, and they plan everything out in a timely manner, which obviously is a good aspect. But then it says, content in the tight hot cell of their hearts to eat dusty bread. And I interpreted this to mean that they're content, they're fine with being controlled. You know, they're caught in the tight hot cell of their hearts. So they're fine being controlled by what they love. So in this case, it would be their husbands or their families if they were to be housewives. And then it says to eat dusty bread, meaning that they always do the same thing over and over again. They don't expect or need lavish things. And as Bogan moves on to the second stanza, it seems she's becoming more expressive with her negative view on these women. And it seems that she's also trying to relay a message that women limit themselves and they're missing out on important aspects of life by living by societal constraints. So when she says they do not see cattle cropping red winter grass, that to me sounds like she believes they're not taking the time to appreciate the little things in life, like watching the cows just eat the grass in the wintertime, or they do not hear snow water going down under culverts, meaning that they don't even take the time to listen to things like the snow water. Shallow and clear, even if the sound is pretty, they don't take the time to listen to it. And again, in the third stanza, it seems that Bogan is becoming progressively more disapproving of the women that she's talking about. When she says, they wait when they should turn to journeys. I interpret that as meaning they stay home when they should travel. And Bogan says they stiffen when they should bend. I interpreted that to mean they are too strict with themselves when they should loosen up. And then Bogan says they use against themselves that benevolence to which no man is friend. Which to me sounds like they even use their good nature against themselves, like loving their children and loving their husbands. And to which no man is friend meant, well, men don't have the good nature that women have at all. So in the first few stanzas, it seems that Bogan is explaining and identifying the tendencies of the conventional female figure in her society at the time. But in the fourth stanza, I feel like she's really attacking what those tendencies will bring about in a woman. Like, for example, cluelessness. I think that when she says, they cannot think of so many crops to a field or of clean wood cleft by an axe, these are things that men of this time would know like the back of their hand, but they're not even aware of these big important matters or even simple important matters. And then she says their love is an eager, meaningless, too tense or too lax. And these two lines were really jam-packed with meaning for me, because their love is an eager, meaningless, to me sounds like she's saying women become so clueless and so unaware of what's going on because all they're focused about is giving love that doesn't really benefit anyone. And eager, meaningless means that they're so eager to give this love, but it doesn't do anyone any good, especially not themselves. And then she goes on to say, too tense or too lax, meaning that the love that women give to their children and families is either too much, that it distracts them from themselves, or too little. And when she says too little, I connected this to prior knowledge that I knew about Bogan, which is she grew up with a mother who had the tendency to cheat on her father and enter into many love affairs and was not around for a big part of her life. So what Bogan is trying to say here seems to be that women either become useless by being housewives or become useless by being bad housewives, rather than living for themselves and finding their own purpose. And so, as Bogan sets up the entire poem thus far to display women as people who don't realize their full potential, who are fine with settling with an inadequate life, in the last stanza, it seems that she's really letting out her frustration in saying that women know that they have opportunities, that they could be taking advantage of them, but they choose not to, which is the most frustrating part. When she says they hear in every whisper that speaks to them a shout and a cry, that in everything around them, they know that there is a shout and a cry for help. There is a way for them to break free. But as like as not, when they take life over their doorsills, they should let it go by. Simply meaning that when they're given opportunities in life, they pass them up because that's what they're used to. That's what society has trained them to do. And that was the overall writing theme that I got from the poem. Overall, I would come to conclude that the poem Woman is about how women do not seize all the opportunities they are presented with because they do not believe that they are their main priorities. It seems that the author is saying that all women know how to do is love and expect nothing in return. They do not desire anything for themselves and do not hope to bring new experiences into their lives. Louise Bogan wrote this poem because she did not accept this as her reality, and she wanted to convince women that they should not either. Thank you.